Autumn 1882, outside of Dry Hollow, New Mexico Territory. The wind howled across the open plain, dragging rain in sideways sheets that stung like tiny needles. The sky had split hours ago, and the dirt trail that ran past Judakin's ranch had turned to something between soup and sorrow, the kind of weather that made a man grateful for solid walls and a roof that mostly held. Inside the main house, Judah stood by the window, arms crossed tight over his chest, jaw set like stone. He was a tall man built thick with years of ranching behind him, calloused hands, back bowed from hauling feed, and eyes the color of old ash. His dark brown hair had started to gray at the temples, not from age, but from everything that came before it. 3 years had passed since malaria took his wife, Sarah. She'd been his soft place. The kind of woman who could quiet a storm just by humming. When she died, something in Judah had sealed shut. He never remarried, never even looked. All he had left was Ellie, 10 years old, whip-smart and as stubborn as the summer sun. She sat now by the hearth, legs crossed, hair in loose braids, reading a dime novel she'd found under the floorboards last spring. Her face lit gold by the fire, had her mother's quiet fierceness. Judah didn't say it aloud, but he watched her like a man who feared she'd vanish if he blinked too long. The knock came sudden, loud over the wind. Judah's eyes flicked to the door. Nobody came out this far unless they were lost, crazy, or looking to borrow trouble. The second knock wasn't so much a knock as a plea. Quieter, slower, hesitant. He grabbed the rifle from its perch and pulled the door open just enough to see. There, soaked through and shivering, stood a woman with a child pressed close to her chest. The woman looked about 30, maybe a few years younger. Her dress hung heavy with rain, and her boots, if they'd ever been whole, were caked in mud and split near the toe. Her face was pale, drawn, and streaked with water. It was hard to tell where tears ended and rain began. The girl in her arms looked to be no more than 7, asleep or near enough, wrapped tight in her mother's coat. "I ain't here to cause no trouble," the woman said quickly. Her voice was raspy, like she hadn't spoken much in days. "Just need somewhere dry for the night." Just for her. Judah didn't speak. He studied her the way a man studies thunderclouds on the horizon, measuring distance, threat, and how long till the storm hits. "I'll sleep in the barn," she added. "We won't touch a thing." The child whimpered, burying her face in her mother's shoulder. That did it. Judah stepped back without a word and pointed toward the barn behind the house. A sturdy structure, dry enough inside if you didn't mind the mice. The woman nodded once, eyes full of something too tired to be hope. She adjusted the girl in her arms and walked through the gate. Judah hadn't even noticed Ellie had opened. He turned to see his daughter standing behind him, barefoot on the porch, hair soaked, mouth parted slightly. "She's got a kid," Ellie whispered. "Not our concern," Judah said. But he didn't close the door right away. Later, once the worst of the rain passed, Judah brought a folded wool blanket and a tin cup of water out to the barn. He left them just inside the doors without a word. When he returned to the house, Ellie was still awake, curled beneath a quilt. "Will they stay long?" she asked. "Just the night." She looked real tired. Judah didn't answer. He stared at the flames and thought about how the woman had held that child not like a burden, but like she was something holy. Inside the barn, Marion tucked Clara into a bed of hay, wrapping her tight in the blanket left at the door. Her fingers were numb, her body sore from walking near 20 meters since dawn, but Clara was dry now. That was what mattered. The barn smelled of horses and old dust, but it was warm, safe. Marion sat beside her daughter listening to the storm ebb and the silence of strangers. She had expected to be turned away. Most men didn't look twice at women with no ring and a child. Fewer still offered space. He hadn't said a word, but he hadn't shut the door either. The next morning, Judah stepped out early as he always did. The air was cold, sharp with the scent of wet sage and morning frost. As he moved toward the corral, he glanced at the barn and paused. The door was open, just a crack. He didn't approach, just watched for a while. A few minutes later, it creaked wider. The woman stepped out barefoot, holding the child by the hand. They looked smaller in daylight, less like strangers and more like something the wind had carried in and didn't quite know how to set down. She saw him but didn't wave. Instead, she gave a small nod, measured, cautious. "Name's Marion," she called, voice steadier now. "This here's Clara." Judah didn't answer. He just nodded once from the porch. Ellie watched the two figures by the barn. She clutched her book to her chest and whispered, "They ain't going yet." And she was right. Dry Hollow, New Mexico territory. 2 days later, the morning sun came up behind the hills like an apology, soft, golden, and slow to burn off the cold. By then the barn door was always open. Marion rose early before the dew had a chance to dry, and by the time Judah was out by the corral feeding the stock, she had already swept out the loft, folded the blanket, and laid Clara's shoes in the sun to warm. He never told her to do any of it, but every task she touched, she did with purpose. Clean, quiet, and careful. She kept to herself, but never too far. Just near enough for Judah to notice how she washed her daughter's hands before every meal. How she picked out burrs from Clara's socks. How she checked the girl's hair each night for lice even when they had nothing left for the bugs to eat. The third morning, she asked if she could help with the horses. Judah grunted, which wasn't a yes, but wasn't a no either. By noon, she had scrubbed the troughs, shoveled out 2 stalls, and organized the tack hooks by size again without being told. She working like she owns the place. Ellie remarked that afternoon, sitting on the fence with her legs swinging. Judah looked over from where he was nailing a loose board. Marion was bent over the hay bin, sleeves rolled, cheeks pink from effort. "She's got grit," he said. Ellie glanced down. "Clara says she's only had 1 pair of boots since last winter." Judah nodded. He'd noticed the cracked soles, too. That night, Clara and Ellie sat cross-legged on the barn floor, whispering secrets and giggling over a ragged doll Ellie had sewn from old flour sackcloth. They weren't quite sisters, not yet, but they had begun that strange dance children do where they orbit one another until comfort sticks from the porch. Judah watched them a long while before heading inside. The girls' laughter drifted like something rare, something he hadn't heard in years. Inside, Marion was bent over the stove, stirring beans he'd planned to eat cold. "You didn't have to," he said. She didn't turn around. "I know." Judah stood awkward for a moment, then went to the shelf above the hearth and pulled down a dusty bottle of corn whiskey. He poured 2 fingers into a tin cup, then a second. Wordless, he handed one to Marion. She raised an eyebrow. "Didn't peg you for a drinking man." "I ain't," he said, "but figured it's colder than usual." She took the cup. Their fingers didn't touch, but they came close. They drank in silence at first, leaning on opposite ends of the hearth. The fire popped between them. The whiskey bit down hard and warm. Judah cleared his throat. "You from around these parts?" Marion shook her head. "Texas-born, Golid County, came west after the fever took. My folks thought maybe Colorado, but the passes were iced, so we drifted." He watched her over the rim of his cup. "You and the girl?" She nodded. "Clara, her pa." She stared into the fire like she could burn the past out of her memory. "Gone on." She didn't explain. Judah didn't push. He understood the weight of dead men better than most. After a pause, she looked over. "You got that look." "What look?" "The one folks get when they think I'm needing pity." "I wasn't thinking that. You were wondering why I stayed." Her voice dropped soft as old prayer. "Truth is, I ain't asking for charity. Just a place where my girl can sleep without flinching. Where she don't got to hide when she hears boots on a floorboard." Judah stared at the fire. His own daughter had slept with a pistol under her bed for 2 months after Sarah passed. Certain someone would come take her, too. He swallowed. "Ain't much comfort here. Just fences and chores." "Comfort's a luxury," Marion said, setting her cup down. "Safety, that's what I'm looking for." They sat with that between them. Not like a wall, more like a thread. Neither dared tug too hard. The next morning, Judah found the porch swept clean and a bundle of washed linens drying on the line. Clara was playing with Ellie near the water trough, laughing as Ellie showed her how to lasso a chicken poorly. Marion stood nearby, eyes calm, but always watching. Judah tipped his hat slightly as he passed. She nodded back. No words, but something in the air had shifted. That evening, after supper, Ellie whispered to Judah, "Can they stay longer?" He didn't answer right away. "Clara makes me laugh," she added. Judah looked out the window where Marion knelt, brushing dirt from Clara's hem with a gentleness that said everything words never could. He drained the last of his coffee and said quietly, Well, see. Dry Hollow, New Mexico Territory, early October. The dry wind carried the scent of sunwarm sage and something sweeter. Maybe hope, maybe dust, maybe both. By the end of that first week, Clara and Ellie were nearly inseparable. They trailed each other like shadows, climbed the same fences, shared the same spoon. When Marion Stewpot ran low, "You ever had cornbread with honey?" Ellie asked one afternoon. Clara shook her head. "Never had honey. Period." "Well then," Ellie declared, "we got to fix that." They made a pact under the cottonwood tree behind the barn, fingers pinky locked, shoes kicked off, the air thick with the smell of dry grass and girlhood. Marion noticed at first the way Ellie had begun calling her Miss M, at first shyly, then with ease, as if the formality kept the affection safe. Marion never corrected her. There was something about the girl's voice when she said it, curious, cautious, but warm, like she was testing the shape of belonging. One evening, Judah found the three of them bent over a broken seed sack. Clara and Ellie giggling while Marion tried to patch it with a bit of twine and patience. He leaned on the door frame, arms crossed, just watching. He said nothing, but when Marion glanced up and caught his gaze, he gave a nod. Nod of approval, exactly, more like recognition. The ranch had a rhythm now. Judah worked the herd and the fences. Marion took to the neglected garden out back. The soil was dry and stubborn, but not dead. With a bit of elbow grease and the last of the compost pile, she coaxed life from it. By the third week, green shoots curled up from the dirt, zucchini, turnip, a handful of squash. She caught Judah watching from the corral once and offered, "Still got a few miracles left in this land." He tipped his hat in reply. Then came the fever. It crept in, sudden like sickness often does, quiet in the morning, dangerous by dusk. Clara was fine at breakfast, laughing over Ellie's crooked drawing of a horse. But by sundown, she was burning up, cheeks flushed, body limp in Marion's arms. Marion didn't panic. She'd been through worse, but this felt different. Clara didn't respond when she whispered her name. Her breath came fast, shallow. "Judas," she called, bursting through the back door. He looked up from the stove, caught sight of the child in her arms, and didn't ask a single question. Just moved. Upstairs in the room, no one entered. Judah dug through a wooden box in the bottom of an old trunk. Inside were vials, dried herbs, and a blue tin of quinine powder. "My wife used this," he said, voice like gravel, "for Ellie. When the fever came, they sat together by the fire in the barn." Clara laid out on a pile of folded blankets. Marion soaked cloths in cold water, pressed them to her daughter's forehead. Judah poured measured pinches of powder into a cup mixed with boiled water, waited for Clara's lips to part just enough. She took a sip, then another, but her eyes didn't open. "Stay with me, baby," Marion whispered. "You hold on." You hear Judah sat down beside her, close enough for their shoulders to touch. "She's a strong one," he said. "Don't look like it, but she is." Marion let her head rest briefly against his arm, just for a breath. "I've done everything I could," she said, eyes rimmed red but dry. "If she goes, I got nothing left." "She ain't going," Judah said, "not tonight." They stayed that way, silent, waiting, breathing to the rhythm of the girl's shallow inhale and exhale. Sometime after midnight, Clara stirred, just a twitch of her fingers, then a soft sound, more sigh than word. Her eyes fluttered open. Mama Marion choked a laugh and a sob all at once. "I'm right here." Clara's small hand reached out, found Judah's knee by accident. He covered it gently with his own. "You scared me, Missy," he murmured, surprising even himself. Clara smiled faintly. "Don't be scared, Mr. Judah. I just had a hot dream." Judah chuckled low. Marion laughed, wet and shaking. By dawn, the fever had broken. The barn was quiet, save for the rustle of hay and the first bird calls beyond the hills. Marion curled around Clara, breathing in the smell of her daughter's damp hair. Judah sat against a post, eyes closed, boots stretched out, his hat tilted over his face. He hadn't left once. When Ellie padded into the barn, sleepy-eyed and clutching her doll, she saw them all in that stillness. Her father, the woman, the girl, and said quietly to no one in particular, "This feels like a real family." No one corrected her. Dry Hollow, New Mexico Territory. Mid-October. The wind had changed out on the plains. Such things meant storms or shifting seasons. But in Dry Hollow, it meant something else. Talk. And talk traveled faster than a dust storm with no fence to stop it. By the second week of Marion and Clara's stay, folks in town had started to murmur. They whispered in the dry goods store, muttered near the blacksmith's forge. Judah Keene's got a woman out there. They said a widow or a runaway, with a kid not his. Some said it with curiosity, others with poison in their breath. Judah didn't bother going into town much. He never had, but even he could feel the change. The way the postmaster avoided his eyes when he picked up supplies. The way Pastor Elkins nodded tight-lipped as if greeting a man who'd misplaced his morals. It all boiled over on a Thursday morning. The sun had barely crested the hills when Judah heard the clatter of hooves against dry earth. A lone rider tore down the path, kicking up a trail of dust and spite. The man was lean, sharp-shouldered, dressed in city rags, gone stale from the trail. His boots were too clean, his jaw too tight. Judah stepped off the porch, saw the figure rein in hard at the gate. Marion came out from the barn just as Clara peeked from behind a hay bale. The man slid down, spit to the dirt. "Marion," he barked. She froze. Judah took one step forward. "You know this man?" Marion nodded once, eyes steel. "Name's Lyle. We were married. Long time ago," Lyle scoffed. "Ain't no word about it. I got papers saying we still are. I ain't seen you in 5 years. Don't change what's legal," Lyle snapped. His eyes shifted to Clara. "And that's my daughter. You got no right running off with her. She ain't yours," Marion hissed. "You left before she was born. Never sent a letter. Never asked. I got blood in her," he shouted. "And I got a right to take her home." Judah stepped between them broad and steady. His voice was low but hard enough to cut granite. "You don't got a home. And that girl's got one now." Lyle bristled. "Who the hell are you to say I'm the one who's been feeding her? Sheltering her, holding her hand through fevered nights. She's my blood." Judah's stare didn't waver. "That don't make you her father." A silence fell thick and dangerous. Lyle sneered, spit again, and took a step closer. "This ain't over." "You're right," Judah growled. "You come back near this place. It'll be finished for good." Lyle backed off, teeth bared, but hands empty. He mounted slow, eyes darting between Judah and Marion. Then Clara. "I'll be back with law," he muttered before riding off in a cloud of dust and empty threats. Marion stormed back toward the barn without a word. Judah followed. "Wait," he called. She spun on her heel, eyes blazing. "You think I'm some kind of project, huh? Some poor stray you get to protect, so you can feel noble? That ain't what this is." "Feels like it. I didn't ask for this either," he snapped. "I was fine with things as they were." "Oh, I believe that," she said bitterly. "A man alone in his fortress of silence. Not needing nobody. That's not fair." She laughed once, sharp, painful. "You think giving me shelter makes you a savior?" Judah's jaw tightened. "No, I think it makes me human." That stopped her. He stepped closer, hands open, but not reaching. "Look, I ain't good with saying things. Never have been. But Ellie, she looks at you like she's got a mother again. And that little girl of yours. She sleeps without crying. That means something." Marion swallowed hard, her anger thinning. "I don't know how to ask for things," Judah continued, "but I know what I need." He looked down, then back up. "I need someone who talks to Ellie like she matters. I need someone who turns dirt into food and silence into warmth. And damn it, Marion, I think I need you." The barn was quiet outside. The wind kicked up a spiral of dust that danced and disappeared. Marion stood there, chest rising and falling. Then she exhaled slow and steady like she'd been holding her breath for 10 years. "You don't get to need me without also seeing me," she said softly. "I see you," Judah replied. "I've been seeing you since that first night." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Instead, she nodded once. "I'm not yours, Judah. Not unless I choose to be." He nodded back. "I ain't asking for that. Just asking you to stay a while longer." Marion turned, saw Clara and Ellie drawing shapes in the dust with sticks. The two girls looked up and waved, giggling at something only they understood. She looked back at Judah. "I'll stay," she said. "But not for you," he smiled. The first real one she'd ever seen on him. For them, she finished, then walked out toward the girls. Dry Hollow, New Mexico Territory, late October. The days grew shorter, the sun less cruel. Mornings came with a chill that crept into your bones before you had time to curse it. But out behind the barn, under a thicket of cottonwoods, something warm was being built, not by men, but by girls with skinned knees and boundless dreams. Ellie and Clara were busy dragging sticks, handfuls of hay, and pieces of old canvas out to a hollow where the grass grew wild and the wind didn't blow so hard. They called it the little house. It's for when we're grown, Ellie explained. So we can still live next door. Always, Clara giggled, but we'll be old by then, like 15. They built it like only children can, with crooked walls, wobbly roof, and more belief than blueprint. Marion stitched 2 scraps of cloth together for a curtain. Judah hammered a nail into a stump so they could hang a pretend lantern. And every night before supper, the girls sat inside giggling and whispering secrets too sacred for adults. Judah watched it all from the fence line. Watched Ellie slip her arm around Clara without thinking. Watched Marion laugh in a way that didn't sound borrowed anymore. That night, under the oil lamp's flicker, he carved something small from an old piece of mesquite, a rough wooden ring, not for beauty, but for meaning. His knife moved slow and sure, each cut whispering a truth he hadn't yet dared say aloud. The next morning, before the sun rose fully, he left the ring on the wooden stoop outside Marion's door, wrapped in a piece of cloth. No note. She found it just after dawn. She didn't smile. Not right away. She just held it in her hand, thumb brushing the grain. Her breath caught somewhere between caution and wonder. Later that day, as the wind kicked up tiny cyclones across the yard, Judah stood by the porch rail, hands in his pockets, gaze set on the horizon like it owed him an answer. Marion enjoined him, wiping her hands on her apron. "You carve this?" she asked, holding the ring between her fingers. He nodded once. Didn't have gold. Didn't seem right anyway. She waited. He didn't speak right away. Just looked out past the barn toward the little house of twigs and hope. Then he said, quiet but sure, "Your daughter needs a home, and my daughter wants a mother." Marion turned to him, studying the man beside her. His face was weathered, mouth a thin line, but his eyes, those gray, tired eyes, held something unguarded. She asked gently, "And what about you, Judah?" He swallowed, looked down at his boots, then back at her. "I want to stop pretending. I don't want more than just silence." His voice cracked just enough to feel real. "I want mornings with voices. I want laughter that ain't borrowed from a memory. I want a woman who knows the names of the plants in the garden and a girl who calls me pa without me having to earn